All right. This is Horns Up. I'm Animesh.
And I'm Peter.
And you're listening to episode number 1. Peter, I still can't believe you're doing this, man.
Neither can I, dude. It's freaking great to be here. Episode 0 was quite up and down, but yeah, we're back.
Yep, that's what we called last week's episode. That was episode 0. We talked about our respective journeys to discovering heavy metal music. This week, we're turning up that heaviness by several notches, aren't we?
Oh yeah, if you're listening this to a loud volume, I think you slightly might want to take this down.
Yeah, it's time to talk death metal, and it doesn't get any more metal than that. So to begin, Peter, what does death metal mean to you?
Well, to me, death metal is quite simple. It's those heavy blast beats in your face with some crunchy guitars, or even those power chords, man. Nothing kind of hits you in the chest like that.
Yeah, hitting you right in the chest. That's exactly how I would define death metal. It's like a boxer repeatedly punching a slab of meat, keeps on just hammering in those blows, an occasional jab here or there, and it keeps on getting more and more aggressive, more and more violent as you spend more and more time with it.
Oh yeah, if your ears don't end up bleeding listening to some of the death metal albums, I'll be surprised.
So how did you get into death metal, man? What was your death metal journey like? How did it begin?
Well, to be honest, death metal was not something that appealed to me right at the start. It's not only just about the imagery or anything else. It's just the whole aura about it. And like we talked in the last episode, I was primarily into the hard rock, got into some of the thrash metal and stuff like that. But yeah, over a while, I warmed up to it, and the curiosity bug hit me. And I think one of the first bands I heard was the legendary Cannibal Corpse.
Same here. Where was the first time you heard them?
I think it was something I downloaded off the internet just out of curiosity that, what the hell is this? I mean, of course, I think another band, because my memory is kind of fuzzy with this, would have also been Deicide that I heard. I mean, come on. Again, their reputation kind of goes ahead of them.
Uh-huh.
And everyone knows about Glenn Benton. Come on.
Yeah, man. Those stories of him branding that cross on his head, an upside down cross, and the fact that Deicide is literally killer of God. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Those are one of the bands that you kind of, for shock value, would probably end up listening to. But then, of course, through my journey, listening to bands like, Monstrosity, Obituary, legendary names in there, Immolation again, with the anti-religion stuff. Mm-hmm. A lot of that kind of sticks. But if I have to compare, New York death metal to Florida, the Florida scene kind of appealed to me more, to be honest. Bands like Atheist, I mean, I love those. The 3 first albums they put out.
Yeah.
Nothing kind of comes close to that.
Yeah, it truly doesn't. Atheist is one of my all-time favorite bands. I'm still searching for a t-shirt though, which just has the band logo, and it sucks because the more and more you search online, it's tougher to find one because Atheist equals to a lot of other things as well. You don't always get that band t-shirt.
So wait, hold up. That was my story, Animesh. Tell me about how you first heard death metal.
Well, just like you, I wasn't an instant fan. The first death metal I ever heard was probably Cannibal Corpse. Actually, it was Cannibal Corpse. And that too, it wasn't by choice. Any guesses as to where I heard them?
MTV?
No, man. It was a fucking Jim Carrey movie. It was Ace Ventura.
Oh God, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, Ace Ventura. In that movie, and for a kid, was just too noisy, man. I couldn't figure out if that was actually supposed to be music. To me, it just felt like a comedy scene. But I got the vibe that it was a rock band, but I just didn't know for sure it was death metal. I only got into death metal much later. And I'd say it was entirely because of Death.
The legendary Death.
As someone who really enjoyed Iron Maiden, I think Death was the gateway death metal band for me. And that too, most of their albums from the later stage. So stuff like Individual Thought Patterns, Symbolic, The Sound of Perseverance. Those albums are the ones that I got addicted to. And it's after digesting those later albums that I could only manage to start listening to the previous stuff because it was all still death. That's how I got started listening to the other genres or the sub-genres as such of what death metal had to offer. But yeah, man.
And the beautiful part about a band like Death is if you visit their discography, just the way the band evolved. I mean, the last
Exactly.
few albums
Yeah.
of theirs kind of set off subgenres in death metal. I mean, the technicality in that, amazing. I mean, just visiting it, and you can go through the entire discography in a day and be listening to complete different styles of death metal and not get bored of it at all.
Completely. I think that's one of the one reasons why many, and absolutely definitely me, consider Chuck Schuldiner to be the godfather of death metal.
He kind of spawned so many people into death metal. He probably never even realized while he was sitting in his bedroom playing his guitar.
Exactly. And what I instantly liked also, I didn't like the music as much, like death metal in general, initially when I was exposed to it. But one thing that I instantly liked upon experiencing it for the first time was all that artwork, man. I mean, you can't help but chuckle at seeing some of that stuff. Skeleton man eating his own intestines. I mean, it's so gross. There's no other word for it. It's so metal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was also one of the cool parts about discovering metal in like the 90s and the early 2000s and stuff. While you still looked through the CD covers and tried to figure out which album you listened to. I mean, just take for example Death or Cannibal Corpse or Obituary. Just looking at all their artworks, it kind of stood out in a CD rack or a cassette rack.
Of course, it did. It make you want to at least take a double look at it. And I don't know about you, but I remember at Planet M, I would get weird, funny looks from the cashiers because I used to have like 2 or at least 1 death metal cassette amongst all the cassettes that I used to buy, and they would be like, "Why are you buying this?" Yeah.
And that's one of the things about being a metalhead. No matter where you are or what you do, you kind of stand out in a way, and artwork is no different from there.
Yeah, well, we could go on rambling forever, but we've got someone with a lot more experience to help us out, right? And it's all thanks to you, Peter.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we kind of lucked out while we were discussing what we should be doing in the next episode. And coincidentally, I get an email about this death metal stalwart, as I'd like to call him. And yeah, it's none other than Erik Rutan.
Yeah, now I'd expect all of you out there to know who Erik Rutan is. But for those of you who don't, well, Eric's a New Jersey native. His first band was Ripping Corpse, with whom he recorded the excellent Dreaming with the Dead. He then left the band to join Morbid Angel and has since had 3 successful stints with them. Of course, in 1996, he found his own band, Hate Eternal, which to date has released 7 studio albums. Peter, why should anyone care about Erik Rutan?
So if you don't know him for his bands, you will definitely know him for his production. He's started the Mana recordings and been responsible for numerous recordings. If you check out the liner notes, you might probably see his name in there. But I first heard him on Cannibal Corpse Kill. Oh man, what an album that was.
Excellent album.
Yeah, just the production. And it was a complete evolution of the band. For people who've been following their discography, it was just something hearing that recording for the first time, man.
Awesome. So this is it. Let's tune in. Joining us from his very own Mana Recording Studios from St. Petersburg in Florida, here's Erik Rutan. Erik, welcome to Horns Up. Thrilled to have you on as our first guest.
Thank you very much.
And of course, congratulations on Upon Desolate Sands. It's definitely a ripper of an album.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Really proud of the new record, and we worked our tails off on it, that's for sure. But yeah, I'm really excited about Upon Desolate Sands.
So Erik, let's take you back to your roots. How did you discover death metal?
Well, I mean, for me, it really started when I was young. My uncle listened to like Black Sabbath and AC/DC and Alice Cooper and Kiss and stuff like that. So really, my first introduction to like heavier music was through my uncle. But the thing that I first got into, the first band that I actually bought record wise was Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden really made me like a devout metal fan, and then Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and Ozzy, and then on to Metallica and Slayer, and then on to death metal after, pretty much in order. I mean, luckily for me, that's the one thing I guess cool about being as old as I am. I'm an old man. I'm 47, right? So I grew up during the birth of metal, right? So I mean, I pretty much was always looking for heavier music And as heavier music came along, I kind of followed, and so, you know, pretty much, after getting into Metallica and Slayer and then the thrash, of course, like Exodus and Possessed and Creator and Destruction and stuff, Sodom, just kind of moved on into heavier music, and I for me, when I first started playing guitar when I was a teenager, I mean, man, all those bands I mentioned, Slayer, Metallica, Ozzy, all that stuff, Iron Maiden and Judas Priest inspired me so much. But I wanted to play heavier, more aggressive music. And at that time, I mean, death metal wasn't a term that I even knew. It was pretty much the beginning stages of the birth of the music. But I ended up finding, as I started writing music, I ended up playing in a band called Ripping Corpse, and then we ended up finding out about Death and Morbid Angel and Deicide and Cannibal Corpse, but all this stuff kind of came out right around as we were doing our music. So I guess you could say, I mean, I just been involved with the music since the birth, just listening, being a fan, and also playing.
So now at 47 years old, what does death metal mean to you?
I mean, death metal is, man, it's so much of my life. I mean, I've dedicated 30 plus years of my life to the genre of music. So I mean, death metal, man, it's. I mean, when you look at what I've accomplished in my career with producing and with playing music, I mean, it's just such a huge part of my life. I love playing death metal. I love listening to death metal, and I mean, it's so much of who I am and everything I've accomplished. Though I mean, I would say it's just a huge part of me that will never leave. I mean, I love playing this music, man. I mean, I love writing this music, and I think that inspiration shows. When you listen to a Hate Eternal record, I mean, if you listen to Pon Desolate Sands, I think you can hear I'm constantly inspired, I guess, because I love playing this music. This music really saved me in many ways as a kid. It gave me something to focus all my negative energy into something that turned into such a positive attribute for my life. And so it's not just like music I listen to or music I play. It's kind of a really essential part of who I am and who I've become. So I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've had through death metal and been able to really honestly turn my life around in a way through playing this music.
And that's great to hear. Animesh and I have a very similar line of thought when it comes to this. We like to call ourselves lifers. It's really great to hear your journey, considering, it's very similar to ours. And of course, we both feel that it's not something that's going to end soon.
I can't ever imagine there'll be a time where I'm not, popping on metal. I mean, it's just impossible. I mean, if I live to 80 or 90, I'm still going to be cranking, these records. I mean, I love this music so much. I never understood people are like, oh, when people say they grow out of this or they moved on from that, I don't understand that. I mean, to me, I love metal and I love all the different subgenres of metal. So I'll be listening to metal until the day I'm gone. So, I mean, I love metal. I love playing. I can't even imagine not playing it either. It's almost seems like impossible for me to imagine my life without metal. It just won't happen.
I'm glad you brought up Ripping Corpse, Eric. You know, Dreaming with the Dead is one of the best death metal albums I've heard in a while. And what's the story there? How did you get to be a part of the band?
Well, Ripping Corpse, I mean, those were guys that I had been friends with since, I was young. Brandon, the drummer, I went to school with since we were young kids, and the other guys I became friends with when I was, probably 14 or something. Ripping Chords formulated, and I ended up starting to play with them. And geez, I want to say it was like 1988 or something. I was 17. I was still in high school, and we ended up doing our first record in 91. When I was 19, and I mean, Ripping Corpse, man. I mean, that was the beginning of everything. Man, we did lots of shows, and we did some mini tours with Morbid Angel during Aldous of Madness and Bless Are the Sick, and that's kind of how I met Trey and everybody in the band.
Uh-huh.
We did a bunch of probably like 10 shows together, I think, and um, I mean, Ripping Course with some great times with some great friends, and we only got to do one record, but we were a little ahead of our time in those days, I think, and um, we had a hard time getting another record deal because people really didn't understand what we were doing. It was kind of really advanced, and but yeah, I'm very grateful for Ripping Corpse, and man, still to this day, I still talk to all the other guys, and we keep in touch. And I have nothing but the best memories of Ripping Corpse, man. I mean, we had some great times, some fun memories, and the record still to this day, I'm still proud of the record very much, man. It's my first record ever, and my first experience um, recording an album, and really that experience is what shaped so much of who I am today as well, is because I had done demos before that in studios, but
Uh-huh.
re- us recording our first album, Ripping Corpse, is what made me want to become a producer and own a studio someday, to be able to be kind of a guy that understood heavier music and could record my own band's albums and some of my friends' bands and stuff like that. And certainly it turned out way beyond what I ever thought, my producing career. But that record really shaped so much of everything I do today, because that experience is what led me to wanting to own a studio and be a producer, and continue down the path as a musician, recording more records. Because to me, writing an album, composing and creating songs, and then recording that album, to me, that's just some of my favorite stuff, in the world.
All right. Now, after Ripping Corpse, you went on to be a part of Morbid Angel, and not just once, but for 3 stints. What were your learnings there? And as a second question to that, what was the process like? How is it different from the process you follow at Hate Eternal?
Oh yeah, it's certainly Morbid Angel. First of all, when I started playing with Morbid Angel, man, I was 21 years old, so um, it was like an incredible, obviously, experience. I mean, my first time playing with Morbid Angel was for Covenant, and they had just recorded the record, and they needed somebody to tour, and I ended up touring with them for Covenant upon its release, and then joining after Covenant for Domination, and then of course touring for that as well. And it was definitely, every band is different and unique. I mean, Ripping Corpse, um, man, like I said, we all known each other forever. We were friends and family, kind of. And Morbid Angel. When I joined Morbid Angel, man, they were like just the next level over. They were already recording, Covenant, which is their biggest record to date. And they were, about, man, 6 or 7 years older than me. So I learned so much about so many things from those guys when I joined. And um, Definitely every band is different and unique. Morbid Angel, obviously Trey has a vision of what Morbid Angel should sound like and what it should be, and so did David at the time. And it was certainly joining Morbid Angel. I had to kind of adapt a little bit to create music that would fit the mold of what Morbid Angel should be and what Trey would approve, man. And so, I mean, I was fortunate enough to write 5 songs for Domination, and obviously they sound like me. They definitely have kind of
Oh
my
yeah.
signature sound, but at the same time, um, I would pretty much write stuff, and I'd say, "Hey Trey, what do you think?" And he might say, "Ah, that doesn't really fit Morbid Angel," and
Oh,
I'd just
okay.
keep working and working and working, and I don't get frustrated easily, so I would just keep working and working and writing stuff until um, pretty much those guys approved it. And with Hate Eternal, um, I mean, I write a majority of the stuff, but JJ, who has been playing with me for over 10 years now,
Okay.
JJ has been playing with me for over 10 years. We've co-written the last three records together. And to me, I just pick the best of the best, whether it's JJ's riffs or my riffs, it doesn't really matter. Like, I think whatever's the best material is what ends up going on the record. And I mean, they're totally different. Hate Eternal, Morbid Angel, they're just very different. But as I certainly, a lot of what I learned in Ripping Corpse and a lot of what I learned in Morbid Angel, I certainly put into how I operate with Hate Eternal, of course. But they're completely kind of different operations, I guess.
Just to kind of switch gears, I wanted to talk to you about record labels. While doing our research, we found, Hate Eternal's first three albums were released by Erik Records. And again, they were one of the biggest labels in their time doing death metal. So what do you think was the influence of labels like Erik, Roadrunner on the overall death metal scene?
Well, Earache and Roadrunner were really the two major labels that, major independents that really just like signed all the killer bands. I mean, like when I was a teenager, I remember, buying Napalm Death and Carcass, on Earache. And man, I mean, I just thought I loved the hell out of those early Napalm and Carcass albums. And then, of course, Morbid Angel and Entombed. I think that, Earache certainly was a big part of the beginning. And then Roadrunner, well, man, they had Deicide and Obituary and Pestilence and Malevolent Creation, Suffocation, geez, I mean, Roadrunner had so many of some of my favorite bands in death metal. And they certainly were kind of a huge part of the beginning of death metal for sure.
I think, the Roadrunner catalog, most death metal fans would definitely have. I mean, they had bands like Deicide, Obituary. The list just goes on.
You have to. You have to own that stuff. That's like, that's all that's some really, some of my favorite death metal records were on Roadrunner and Earache.
And of course, all that artwork. I mean, here in India, just seeing artwork that visualize so many unique ideas, definitely influential, now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love the art, a lot of the covers from back in the day. And, Dan Seagrave certainly did a lot of great covers, for Morbid Angel and Suffocation and other bands. And I totally agree.
Eric, you've been a metalhead for almost 4 decades as a fan and as an artist. What do you think has changed over the last few years? The fans, labels, death metal itself?
Well, I mean, music has, evolved, obviously, into many more subgenres and things that I can't even keep track of, like, I mean, somebody would be like, hey, do you like so-and-so whatever metal? And I'm like, wow, I've never even heard of that subgenre of the genre, so, but I think music has certainly evolved in some degree, as far as what people are doing and kind of, putting in various influences and stuff that wasn't maybe there 25 years ago. The crowds, I mean, they honestly, I mean, it's like for my whole career, there's just been so many great people that I've met over the years. And, now it's amazing that I meet people and they're introducing me to their kids. Like I met, like, I can't tell you how many guys I met on the last few tours where they're like, yeah, I met you in 95 during Domination. Here's my son. He just turned 18 and it's his first, whatever concert or something, I mean, so it's incredible that I'm meeting generations of families that have been following my career. And the one thing I've noticed is just that this kind of music, it just generates such loyalty. And the thing is that I always think about that, that I don't take it for granted, the fact that people, have followed my career and buy the records that I do. And I mean, the more I do, the more compliments and things I receive. And it, it's, I guess the older I get, the more I do it, the more humbled I become as a person, because I just think, wow, you meet guys on tour that say such nice things and say, man, your music, I've been listening to your music for, almost 30 years, and it's like, wow, it's hard to believe that, one, the time went pretty quick, and then two, that I've been doing this for that long. And I mean, the crowds and the fan bases, they change over time, but the one thing that doesn't change is kind of the loyalty to the music and the passion for that music. And I certainly, man, I appreciate that to no end.
All right, as a follow up to that, I'd like your thoughts on something. Now, in today's world, attention spans are super short. Everything's easily skippable. And well, it just takes a lot of effort to really sink your teeth into something. Do you think this has affected heavy metal in any manner?
I think it does, in the sense of, like, when I was younger and a record came out, man, I mean, I would, like, that record would be in my, whether cassette or record, vinyl or CD. Man, I would listen to that thing over and over and over again for months, years, still listen to it. And we're now, I think people tend to move on quick, here today, gone tomorrow, just like the news. Something's in the news, and then 2 days later, it's already forgotten about. I think we have such a wealth of information now that you didn't have back in those days, that, yeah, the attention span is so limited. So that's the one thing I've noticed, is that records don't have the same longevity per se.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I mean, in the last episode, Animesh and I were discussing about our mutual love for Iron Maiden. I mean, Power Slave, I listened to that album for almost 2 weeks at a stretch. What do you think about the whole trend? How has it affected you as a musician, Erik?
I guess you just kind of realize as a musician, like maybe 20 years ago when we were doing records, those things, it was a different thing, where now you just kind of know that when you put out, I mean, like, you'll release a record now, and then like 3 months later, somebody's like, hey, when are you doing a new record? And you're like, wow, we just released one like 3 months ago that took 2 years to create. But so I guess, what, one thing I do is, man, I guess myself personally, is I try not to let outside sources or things I can't control my thoughts or my emotion, because the one thing I've learned over my time, and not just in my life, but in my career, is that, you can only change the things you can change, and focus on the important things in life, and let the things that you can't control fall by the wayside, because it's just a waste of energy. And so, for me, a lot of kind of what I do, I just really, I'm just a very focused person. So I try not to focus on things I can't change, I mean, because there's no point in it. And, a lot of that comes from just, I guess, there's like lots of mantras and things that I kind of live by. And, I kind of tell myself all the time, and I'm pretty loyal to those mantras, because I feel like by focusing on the things I can change and not worrying about the things I can't, it just helps my life in a positive fashion.
So, wait, this is our death metal special episode. So, I want to throw the ball in your court. What have you been listening to, Erik? What are the bands that you've been listening?
I mean, you know what? Like newer bands or older bands, or?
Oh, well, it doesn't matter. We just want to know what's on your playlist at the moment.
Well, I can tell you that the last, I just got home from tour, and so we were listening to, I mean, there's certain staples, man, that I listen to, and not just death metal, but, like, man, some of the records that I just listen to on a pretty regular basis, Metallica, Master of Puppets. I mean,
yeah.
Classic. The Iron Maiden catalog. I mean, you could just go from the beginning. I mean, Power Slave to Peace of Mind, Number of Beast. I mean, I've been listening to these records. Slayer, Hell Awaits, Rain and Blood. I mean, some of the classic kind of metal records I've been listening to a lot lately. But I also listen to, of course, Deicide, Suffocation, and things like that. But also like bands like, man, other stuff, like, man, Ozzy, of course, man. I mean, I love Blizzard of Oz and Dire of a Man. Those are two of my favorite records. And, Van Halen, man. I mean, we crank all kinds of stuff. But I mean, that's a lot of what I've been listening to lately.
Now, to wrap things up, we'd like to play one of the songs from Upon Desolate Sands. Which one should we play and why?
I know it's a tough one.
Yeah, I would say, geez, man, it's a tough call because like all 9 songs have their place on there. So I guess I will I'll say All Hope Destroyed because I think that's, musically speaking, it's one of my favorite songs on the record. It's got a lot involved to it, and it really kind of showcases a lot of the musicality of everyone involved in the band, and it's definitely a song that I'm really proud of.
Done. We'll cue that one up in just a bit. Thanks a bunch for taking some time out for us, Erik. Hope to see you in India soon, man.
Oh boy, I hope I get to come to India someday as well. And man, India is one of the countries that I've always thought I would love to come to and play. And just I really, really hope someday I get to come to India. It's one of the countries on my list of places I haven't been to, because as you imagine, I've been to many places, but certainly I hope someday I have the pleasure and honor of coming to India. And thank you so much for the interview, and have a great week.
You too, man. Cheers. Horns up.
Cheers. Thank you.
That was Erik Rutan, and here's the song he asked us to play from Hate Eternal's latest album, Upon Desolate Sands. This is All Hope Destroyed.
I see the everlasting vision as the
solid track, man. What did you make of it? Did you enjoy the album?
Oh yeah, I actually was listening to it a bit earlier this week.
In preparation? Yeah, same here.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things you'll notice is just, again, like his production, his songwriting has also kind of evolved. You find some melodic parts in there. So yeah, it was quite refreshing just to see the way they have evolved as a band also. I mean, the seventh album in, you know, you'd think they'd kind of get into a rut, but yeah, they're still keeping it fresh.
Yeah, man. One thing that I have to talk about though is the drums. That had to have been one of the world's best cardio exercises ever. It's just constant blast beats and fills, blast beats and fills, blast beats and fills.
I mean,
there's no let up.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I generally enjoy about death metal also, and especially bands like Hate Eternal. It's start to finish
brutality.
It's brutality. I mean, this is something I'd completely enjoy listening to while at the gym, working out and stuff like that. It just doesn't let you go.
All right, so let's move this episode to the ending point. Peter, what have you subject yourself to in this past week?
So the first album I'd like to mention is the legendary Master. They're one of the early bands, kind of set the tone for death metal. They have the new album Vindictive Miscreant out on, shout out to Transcending Obscurity.
Straight out of Joxy, raise them horns up.
Oh yeah, straight out of Bombay here. I'm really glad, you know, a label like that is putting out a band like this. And, you know, for those of you who've been listening to Master, shouldn't be surprised. You know, meat and potatoes, death metal, straight up, unrelenting for the entire album, start to finish. So those of you who love the old school death metal, you should definitely check it out. What about you, Animesh?
Well, I took your word and I checked out Psychroptics As the Kingdom Drowns. I can see why it's been applauded, but then again, for me, it kind of really didn't hit the spot. Okay. It's very sweet technical death metal, don't get me wrong, but can I remember any of the riffs after one listen? No. Maybe I need to listen to it twice or thrice, but it didn't have that absolutely memorable thing or that one singular memorable thing for me.
What do you think about, I'm very curious to know, what do you thought about the female vocals in there, that part? Because that was, for me, was something where you don't really see it in death metal. It was more predominant in, say, black metal earlier. And I think that's where they kind of pushed the envelope forward on this album.
I mean, it's not something that's never been done before. So we've heard music like that in the past. So it really didn't open up a new dimension or something of that sort. That being said, I don't think it's a bad album at all.
Yeah.
It's just, I didn't think it was memorable enough for me.
Fair
Anyways, yeah. So that was one thing that I heard. Any other new stuff you've checked out?
Oh yeah, there's another band which just earlier this month put out their album, Zealotry, at the nexus of all stillborn worlds.
Okay, can you spell that band name out for us?
Zealotry.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so again, there's something about, you know, checking out bands that you just released their album, and especially I didn't have the promo copy for it, but man, this band kind of blew me away.
What do they play?
No surprise, death metal. But these guys are really something. I mean, you see a lot of technical. I mean, while I am partial to a bit technical, I've been listening to a lot, at least for this episode prior to this, listening to a lot of old school stuff. And these guys, again, unrelenting. I think you might enjoy it just in terms because you enjoyed the Hate Eternal, the drums. I don't know, I can't remember the drummer's name, but this guy has really put in the hard work on this album, man. So definitely, I think you should check this one out.
All right, I will. The other album I like to talk about is Toad King. Okay, it's a really short 3-single EP from this band called Goblin Smoker. No surprises to guess what genre it is. It is
doom.
Yeah, it's sludgy. It's more sludge metal than it is doom. But yeah, it kind of sits in between that or melds both of those. It's the sludgiest sludge I've heard, or the doomiest sludge I've heard in a long time. It's something that I keep reaching back for whenever I need to just tune other things out and focus. So yeah, that's Goblin Smoker's Toad King.
All right. And my last pick is an Indian band from Hyderabad called Godless.
I've heard a lot about them.
Oh yeah, you should definitely check out their EP Swarm. They released it earlier this year in October. And one of the things I really enjoy about this band is, as relentless they are on record, they're equally live. And their vocalist, I mean, shout out to Kaushal, he really is a monster. And he's part of 5 different bands at this moment.
Holy shit, he's keeping busy.
Yeah, but he puts on a complete different persona for each. I mean, you have to kind of hear it. And, at 5 tracks, it's a quick listen, but it's intense. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about Godless, both live as well as on the record. Start to finish, intense, no bullshit death metal.
All right, so I'm definitely going to be adding that to my playlist. And yeah, that's it. That's it for episode 1. As always, he's at Trend Crusher on social media. I'm at Asmani, only on Twitter. Thanks for listening, and thanks for throwing them horns up.
And hold them up high.